questions on this topic and also the parts that are mostly examinable. So first of all, we need to understand the concept, or rather let's try to break down the definition of what a tissue is and what a nerve is, and from there we'll build up the concept that is under nervous tissue. So we are going to look at nervous tissue as you have said. Nervous tissue. So we need to understand what a tissue is. So basically, a tissue is just a group of similar cells that will be working together to perform a specific function in the body. So for example, we have tissues like the epithelial tissues. They are made up of similar cells that performs a specific function. Also the muscle tissues and also other connective tissues, just like we are going to talk about the same nervous tissue. So a tissue is basically a group of cells or a group of similar cells that work together to perform a specific function in the body. Then a nerve is basically just a bundle of axon fibers. So this bundle of axon fibers, they are enclosed in a connective tissue, and as they are enclosed in that connective tissue, the nerve fibers, they are going to be facilitating the transmission of electrical impulses or signals to the central nervous system, as well as to the effector organs, as we are going to dig down in understanding the nervous tissue. So the nervous tissue, basically, it is just a specialized type of tissue that detects stimuli, processes information, and transmits the signals. So it is going to be responsible for receiving signals, processing the signals, and transmitting the signals through an electrical or chemical signal. So these signals that are received by a nervous tissue, they can either be electrical or chemical. So when you say chemical, we have got what we call chemical messengers, of which I can say neurotransmitters. So these neurotransmitters are the ones that are used to transmit information, especially when a signal is moving from one neuron to the other neuron at a junction that is known as the synaptic cleft. Then electrical signals, this is just due to the depolarization and repolarization of the membrane potential, and due to that sequence, you are going to find that signal will be transmitted in form of electrical, like electrical. Deeper as we start looking at the nervous system. So now, the nervous tissue, it forms the main component of the nervous system. Know that this nervous tissue that we are talking about, it forms the main component of the nervous system, and it is distributed throughout the body because it is involved in the integration of different signals, of which we can say it is involved in body integration of signals, also communication system. It is going to be involved. So it is the main component of the nervous system. So the nervous system that we are talking about, which is formed by the nervous tissue. So the nervous system is divided into two. We have got the central nervous system as well as the peripheral nervous system. So the central nervous system, as you all know, it is composed of the brain and also the spinal cord. That is for the central nervous system. Then for the peripheral nervous system, they just be having the nerve fibers and the nerve cells, the nervous tissue. So the nervous tissue is actually made up of too many types of cells, and these cells, we have got the first type, which is known as neurons, and also have another type which is known as neuroglial cells, also referred to as the glial cells. So these neurons are the functional unity of the nervous system because are the ones that are involved in the receiving, processing, and transmission of information in form of electrical or chemical signals. And these neurons are also known as a nerve cell. So if you say nerve cell or neuron, you're basically talking about the same thing. So one thing that you have to highlight on neurons is that neurons are the basic or rather they are the functional unit of the nervous system, and they receive, process and transmit signals or information in form of electrical or chemical signals. So these neurons, they have got parts, like the way we know and we have seen once a structure of a neuron. So just taking a quick diagram of how a neuron looks like, which is a nerve cell. They have got parts, and we need to understand these parts because they are very, very important in the function of a nerve cell. So these neurons, how they are is that they are going to have a cell body, which is also known as soma. They're going to have a cell body. This cell body is also known as a soma. Then inside this cell body, that's where we're going to have a nucleus, and we all know what the function of a nucleus is. Then they are going to have dendrites. Dendrites that are going to be appearing like hair on it. Just imagine it as if it is hair on the neuron. Then they are also going to have an axon that will come down, and this axon is going to terminate into what we call axon terminus. So it is going to form axon terminus. So we are going to have an axon. We are also going to have these that are known as the dendrites. Then this axon can be covered in a sheath, which is known as a myelin sheath, often to be appearing in this form. So it will be covered in a sheath that is known as a myelin sheath. This myelin sheath is actually very important because it increases the conductivity of the transmission of these impulses or signals along the axon. So it will be increasing the rate at which the information will be transmitted from one nerve cell to the other. That is the significance of the myelin sheath. Then we are going to have this part which we say that these are going to be the axon terminus. And these axon terminus are the ones that are going to be connecting to the other neuron, or they'll be connecting to an effector organ. That can be a muscle or a gland. So these are known as axon terminus. And in between the axon terminal and, let's say, we are having an effector organ or another neuron, there is a space that is known as the synaptic cleft. At that point, that's where we are going to be seeing the transmission of the signals. As they are coming here in form of electrical, when they reach the synaptic cleft here, they'll be transmitted as a chemical signal, meaning that there will be a release of a neurotransmitter, which is a chemical messenger that will go and bind to the receptor on the postsynaptic neuron. And as it binds there, then the information will be carried on just like that. So when you look into the physiology, you dig down into it and to understand more of it. So the neuron, apart from these other parts, it also has got other parts like the axon hillock. This part, it is known as the axon hillock. So these are the parts, or in terms of the structure of a neuron, these are the parts, and we have mentioned some of the functions of these parts. Like we have the dendrites. These dendrites are involved in the receiving of information from other nerve cell. So they are going to be branch-like projection, just like the way they are. They are branch-like projection that will be involved in receiving signals from other neurons or from other sensory receptors. So they are going, when they receive information, they will transmit it and take it towards the cell body. And from the cell body, what the cell body will do is that the cell body is going to receive that information, integrate that incoming signals from the dendrites, and then it will send it via the axon to the other neuron that is going to be here, or the effector organ. That will be the function of the cell body. Then in the cell body there, we are going to find that it is also a metabolic center of a neuron. So we are going to find that there in the cell body there is also metabolic activities that will be taking place there, and also the synthesis of chemical messengers that are excited at the synaptic cleft to transmit information from one neuron to the other. Then the axon, as we have been talking about it, it is this long fiber here, this long thin fiber. It will be carrying signals away from the cell body. So when the signals from the cell body comes in, it is integrated from there. It is going to be sent, and the cell body, as it sends that information, it will be carried by the axon from the cell body, taking it now to the other neuron. And this axon, it is going to end and terminate as the axon terminals. It is going to form these terminals. So the axons, as we have seen, it is covered in the myelin sheath. This myelin sheath basically just increases the conduction speed, the speed at which these signals are going to be transmitted from the cell body, transmitted to another neuron or to the effector organ. Then the other thing that you have to know is the same axon terminal that we talked about, that this is just the end part of the axon which connects the neuron to the muscles, glands, or other neurons. Basically, it transmits these signals chemically via the neurotransmitters across the synapse. So that synapse, the same space that we are talking about as the synaptic cleft. So it will be transmitting the signals in form of chemical, or it will be transmitting chemical signals from one neuron to the other, and these chemical signals are the one that we refer to as neurotransmitters. Yeah. Then from there, you're going to find that these neurons that we're talking about, which are the nerve cells, are classified based on their function and as well as in their structure. So depending on how it looks like, it is given a certain name, and also depending on its function, it is also given a certain name, or it is classified. So we have got neurons depending on their function. We have got neurons like motor neurons. So these motor neurons, basically what they do is that they are involved in receiving sensory, or rather, the motor neurons are involved in transmitting impulses from the central nervous system, taking it to the effector organ. So what they do is that when they receive that information, they will transmit it now from the central nervous system to the effector organ. These motor neurons are the one that takes information. Let's say, when, for example, when you touch an hot object, that hot object will send signals that will go to the central nervous system. When that signal is processed in the central nervous system, it is going to be sent to the effector organ of that particular part of the body which is experiencing that hotness. So when it is sent, then you will see a movement or a reaction. So now, how that is sent, it is via a motor neuron. So this motor neuron is the one that receives that information from the central nervous system and take it to the effector organ, which can be a muscle, for example. And as it takes to the muscle, that muscle will contract in order for you to remove your limb from where you are touching. Then we also have sensory neurons, just from the same sensory. So meaning that these are neurons that are involved in receiving the sensory stimuli from the environment or within the body. Then they will be taking it to the central nervous system. So let's say this is your hand. This is your hand, right? And this is your hand. There is a flame here. They say there is a candle just beneath your hand. So this candle here will be burning this part of your arm. So what will happen is that the sensory neurons, they will detect, they say there is a burning sensation at this particular portion of your hand. And what they will do is that they will get that stimuli, and then they will transmit that stimuli to the central nervous system to make you be aware, to say, oh, there is something that is happening there. So when it gets to the central nervous system, that information will be integrated and the feedback will be sent to the effector organ, of which these effector organs are going to be muscles of that particular limb. When it goes to the effector organs, then you're going to move your hand. So those neurons that are involved in detecting the sensory stimuli, receiving that sensory stimuli from environment, are the ones that are known as sensory neurons. Then from there, we also have what we call interneurons. So these interneurons are actually neurons that connect the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. So they are more like they are relaying in between the two. They are connecting this to the other one. They are found within the central nervous system. These interneurons, that's where they are found. So upon knowing these three types of neurons that we have talked about, we can also try to look at how these neurons are classified according to their structures. So neurons are classified according to their structure. Remember, this classification that we had here, where we're talking about the motor neuron, the sensory neuron, and those as well as the interneuron, it is based on their function. So functionally, they are classified as motor neuron, sensory neuron, and interneuron. Then structurally, they are also classified structurally depending on how their structures is. So I've got the first one, which is known as the multipolar neuron. So this multipolar neuron is the most common type of neuron cell, or it is the most common type of the nerve cell that is found in the body. So you're going to find that this one, how it looks like, it has multiple dendrites, and it is only going to have one axon. That is how this multipolar neuron will be looking like. It will be looking like this. It is going to have a cell body, just like we talked about, the nucleus, and it is going to have multiple dendrites. It is going to have multiple dendrites. This is finger-like projection. Then it is only going to have one axon. That will now be terminating into the axon terminus, just like we have seen here. So it is going to have one axon, and it is going to have multiple dendrites. And it is the most common type of a nerve cell that you are going to find. It is the multipolar neuron. It has multiple dendrites and only one axon. That is for a multipolar neuron. So it is termed as multipolar neuron just because it is having multiple dendrites, as we have seen from the structure. So structurally, we have got multipolar neurons. So they are named as multipolar, that's like we have seen, because of how their structure is formed, or how their structure is made up. Then we also have another type of neuron, which is known as bipolar neurons. Bipolar. These bipolar neurons, how they are is that they have one dendrite, which is the main dendrite. They have got one main dendrite and one axon. And these bipolar neurons, we have to mark that they are found in specialized sensory organs. So these specialized sensory organs, we have organs like the retina. That's where you're going to find these bipolar neurons. And also we have got the inner ear. That's why you're going to find most of these bipolar neurons. So structurally, how they are formed is that they have got one main dendrite and as well as one axon. That's how they are going to be looking at. One main dendrite and one axon. So you're going to find that bipolar neurons will have a soma. That's like where we know from the beginning that a neuron is going to have a soma, which is the cell body. And then it is going to have one main dendrite, which is going to be appearing like this. So this one main dendrite will be having branches like that, finger-like projection, but it will just be one main dendrite. Then they are also going to have one axon. So I'm just going to have an axon that will just come out like that. And perhaps this axon can also be myelinated to be covered by a myelin sheath, like that. This is how a bipolar neuron will be looking like. So the bipolar neuron, they are mostly found in specialized sensory organs like we have talked about, which is the retina or the inner ear. You're going to find that you find these types of neuron, and you have to mark this point. Then the other type of a neuron that we can talk about is a neuron that is known as unipolar neuron. Unipolar neuron. This is the third one, the unipolar neuron. So these unipolar neurons, how they are is that they have a single process that splits into two. So they are going to have a single process that will come and they will split into two. And these unipolar neurons, they always function as sensory neurons. They function as sensory neurons, or they are sensory neurons. So that's why you're just going to be found in is that they are sensory neurons. So how it is going to be looking like is, we are going to have a body, which is the soma, which is the cell body, nucleus there. Then it is going to have a single process. This single process, it is the one that is now going to split into two. So one will go like that, then the other one will go like this. Then this one here will go and form the axon terminus like this. Then this side here, that's why you are going to have the dendrite. So if you have seen that these three types of neurons, they tend to differ in terms of their structures. So this one, the unipolar, it will be looking like this. It will have one main process that is going to divide into two. So we are going to have one part which will divide and form the dendrite, and the other part which will divide to form the axon. So structurally, as we have talked about, these neurons are divided into three. We have the multipolar neuron, which we say that these neurons are the most common type of nerve cells, and they are found, or rather they have multiple dendrites and one axon. That's what we said. And then we also have bipolar neurons. We say that these bipolar neurons, they have one dendrite, which is one main dendrite and one axon, and they are found in specialized sensory organs. We say that sensory organs like the retina, the inner ear, and so on and so forth. And the other type of neuron structurally, which is classified as unipolar neuron, like this one that we are from talking about, they have a single process that will divide, or that will split into two, forming the dendrite part as well as the axon part that will go and form the axon terminus. Then functionally, we said that these neurons are divided into three as well. We're going to have sensory neurons that will be involved in receiving the sensory stimuli from the environment within the body towards the central nervous system. Then the motor neurons, they will be transmitting impulses from the central nervous system, taking them to the effector organs that can be muscles, glands, and so on and so forth. Then the third one, we said they are interneurons. These will just be connecting the central the sensory neuron as well as the motor neuron, and they are found within the central nervous system. The interneurons are found within the central nervous system. So having talked about that, we also have to know that the nervous system, just like the way we talked about it at first, is that it has got too many types of cells, or the nerve tissue. It has got too many types of cells. It has got the neuron cells, which are known as the nerve cells, as well as the neuroglial cells. These neuroglial cells are the ones that are also called the glial cells. So we have talked about the nerve cells, also known as the neurons. Now we are going to talk about the glial cells. So we said that these nerve cells are the ones that are involved in transmitting, processing of information, and receiving of information from the introduction, if you remember very well. That's what we said. And we said that a nerve cell, it is a functional unity of the nervous system. So you may find a question to say, which one is the functional unit of the nervous system? Just know that it is a neuron or a nerve cell. So this neuron, we talked about their classification depending on their structure as well as their function. We also talked about the features or the parts of the neuron and their function as we are labeling here. Yeah. So now we are going to go to the glial cells. What are these glial cells? So glial cells, basically these cells, they just provide structural support to the nerve cells or to the neurons. They provide support, protection, and also nourishes the same neurons that we are from talking about. So these glial cells, they do not generate electrical potentials, or they do not conduct the transmission of electric potentials like the way we saw neurons that they conduct. For them, they just provide support, protection, and nourishment to the neurons. So they help in the maintenance of the structure of a neuron as well as the functional integrity of a neuron. That is just the function of these glial cells. That is the main function of the glial cells. So glial cells, they are split into two, just like the way we know that the nervous system, it is in the we have got the central nervous system. It is split into the central nervous system and as well as the peripheral nervous system. That's why even these glial cells, we are going to find that there will be glial cells that will be found in the central nervous system as well as glial cells that will be found in the peripheral nervous system. So you have to know which glial cell is found in the central nervous system and what does it do there, and which glial cell is found in the peripheral nervous system and what does it do there, because those are the most examinable points when you go into your exams and also your test. You'll be encountering questions like that. So as we have said, the glial cells, they provide structural support as well as functional support to the neurons, and also they do not generate electric potentials or electric impulses. So these glial cells, we have got glial cells that are going to be in the central nervous system. So we are going to start with those glial cells that are found in the central nervous system. So we have got the first glial cell that is known as an astrocyte. Astrocyte. This is the first cell. So what the astrocytes are is that, first of all, in terms of their morphological appearance, they have a star shape. They have a star shape in terms of their appearance. That's one thing that you have to mark. They have a star shape. And these astrocytes, they store glycogen. They store glycogen because they are the one that helps to provide a backup mechanism in terms of depletion of glucose in the body. So they store glycogen. You also have to take note of that. They store glycogen. Then they also provide physical support for the neurons, like the same nerve cells, and they regulate the blood-brain barrier. That's one thing that you have to know. So the astrocyte, they are star-shaped cells. They store glycogen and they provide physical support for the neurons, which are the nerve cells, and also they regulate the blood-brain barrier, meaning that they are involved in the regulation of what crosses the blood-brain barrier, because the blood-brain barrier, it is the one that prevents it is a regulator of what crosses to go to the brain tissue. It regulates those materials or substances that should cross to get to the brain tissue, and also that should just remain into the vascular system. So they are part of, or they regulate the blood-brain barrier, the astrocyte. So we have got two types of astrocytes. The first one, it is known as the protoplasmic astrocyte. Protoplasmic astrocyte, as well as the fibrous astrocyte. Yeah. So basically on the astrocyte, these are the most important points that you have to take note of. They are star-shaped cells. They store glycogen, of which acts as a backup mechanism to supply energy to the nerve cells, because this glycogen is broken down, because we know that glycogen is just a storage form of glucose. When glucose has to be stored in the body, it is going to be converted to glycogen when we start looking at glycogenesis. And when it is now about to be broken down to produce glucose so that the cell can use it, it is going to undergo glycogenolysis. So these astrocytes, they will just store this glycogen for support to the cells, and also they will provide a physical support for the neurons, which are the nerve cells, and they will regulate the blood-brain barrier. Then they are of two types. We have protoplasmic astrocyte and fibrous astrocyte. Then the other type of cells that are found, which are under the glial cells but found in the central nervous system, is the oligodendrocytes. Oligodendrocytes. These oligodendrocytes, one thing that you have to take note of is that they are the one that forms the myelin sheath around the axons of the central nervous system. So when you remember, we talked about it, say the axon of the neurons, it tends to be covered in a sheath that is known as a myelin sheath. So now, this myelin sheath, for those cells that are found in the central nervous system, it is the oligodendrocytes that is involved in the formation of that myelin sheath and wrapping it around the axons. And these oligodendrocytes, they can cover multiple axons. multiple axons of the nerve cells. They can cover just one oligodendrocyte, can cover multiple of them. Then they are found in both gray matter and white matter. Oligodendrocytes are found in both the gray matter and white matter of the brain. So the most important point here that we have to take note is that these oligodendrocytes are the one that forms the myelin sheath around the axons of the central nervous system, the axons of the nerve cells that are found in the central nervous system. Then we also have another type of glial cells that are found in the central nervous system, which is the microglial cells. Microglial cells. These microglial cells, they act as the immune system of the central nervous system. So what they do is that these microglial cells, if there are some dead tissues or dead cells that are found that are in that particular portion of the central nervous system, these microglial cells, they migrate or they move to go to that site, and they will cause the removal of those dead cells that are caused by, maybe it can be due to ischemia or hypoxia or different causes, but they are just involved in the phagocytosis of these dead cells, as well as pathogens that may invade the central nervous system. So they act as immune cells of the central nervous system. They have these microglial cells. Microscopically, you are going to find that they have elongated nucleus, which is a nucleus that may look to be a bit elongated like this, or it may be spherical, just like a sphere. You know these shapes. So you have to take note of that. They act as immune cells of the central nervous system, meaning that they are the ones that are involved in the removal of dead cells or pathogens that may invade the central nervous system via the process of phagocytosis. They are going to go and phagocytose that particular dead tissue or pathogen, and then they will digest it, they will remove it out of the central nervous system. Then the other type of the glial cells that are found in the central nervous system, which is the fourth one now, it is the ependymal cells. These ependymal cells, they say that they produce and circulate cerebrospinal fluid. But how it is that the brain has got what we call the ventricular system. So this ventricular system of the brain, you're going to find that the brain will have ventricles. You're going to have the lateral ventricles and another lateral ventricle. Then we're going to have a third ventricle, and this third ventricle will connect to what we call the fourth ventricle. So these ventricles, they facilitate the movement and also the formation of the cerebrospinal fluid, the fluid that is found in the central nervous system. So this fluid is very, very important because it is the one that is involved in the wiping off or swiping or sweeping off of the waste materials that are formed, because we know that these the brain cells, which are the nerve cells, also they have got metabolic activities, because we said that in the cell body there are metabolic activities or functions that occur. So, and we know that there can be some byproducts that are waste products that can be formed. So in order to remove them from there, so that they can maintain the homeostasis, the fluid which is involved to remove them there, it is the same cerebrospinal fluid. So the ependymal cells, they are the one that are involved in the formation of what we call the choroid plexus. So these cells, what they do is that they just help in the formation of the cerebrospinal fluid. They help in the formation of this fluid via the filtration of blood plasma. So these ependymal cells, they'll be filtering the blood plasma to form the cerebrospinal fluid, which will be circulating into the ventricular system of the brain. We are going to know more as we do neurophysiology on this particular part. So the most important point that you should just get here is that they help in the formation of cerebrospinal fluid, as well as the circulation of the same cerebrospinal fluid, and they line the ventricles of the brain and the central canal. So the lining of the ventricles and as well as the central canal of the spinal cord, it is formed by the same ependymal cells, are the one that lines it. Like they are going to be lining the same ventricles as well as the central canal as you go down the spinal cord. So these are the four types of glial cells that are found in the central nervous system. So we have the astrocyte cells that we say that they appear to be in star-shaped like, and they are also involved in the storage of glycogen, and they are of two types. We have got protoplasmic astrocyte as well as fibrous astrocyte. Then the second one, we said these are oligodendrocytes, and we said that these oligodendrocytes are the ones that are involved in the formation of a myelin sheath around the axon of the central nervous system. This myelin sheath, it increases the conductivity of the impulses, or rather of the signals that are transmitted by the nerve cell. It means that those axons that are myelinated, or that are covered in a myelin sheath, their conductivity is way faster compared to those that are not covered in a myelin sheath. So that's one of the significance of the myelin sheath, and you're going to know more about it. And also what you have to take note under the oligodendrocyte is that they are just found in both the gray matter as well as the white matter. Then we also talked about the glial cells. These glial cells, we said the microglial cells, we said that these cells, they act as the immune system of the central nervous system. They are the ones that are involved in the removal of the dead cells, pathogens that may invade the central nervous system via the process of phagocytosis. Then the last one that we talked about under the glial cells in the central nervous system was the ependymal cells, which we say that they are involved in the formation of a cerebrospinal fluid and also the circulation of the same fluid, and they line in the ventricular system of the brain as well as the central canal. Then when it comes to the peripheral nervous system, we have got also two types. So in total, we have got 6 glial cells. So 4 are going to be found in the central nervous system, then 2 are going to be found in the peripheral nervous system. So the glial cells that are found in the peripheral nervous system, the first one, we have got cells that are known as the Schwann cells. Schwann cells. So these Schwann cells, they are also known as neurolemocytes. Neurolemocytes. Like this. Yeah, they are also known as neurolemocytes. So where you are going to say neurolemocyte, either in a question, just know that they are talking about the Schwann cells, and they are found in the peripheral nervous system. So what this does is that in the peripheral nervous system, these Schwann cells are the one that forms the myelin sheath. And we noticed that from the central nervous system, what was forming the myelin sheath was the oligodendrocyte. So this point you also have to mark it. In the peripheral nervous system, what forms the myelin sheath around those axons, it is the Schwann cells. And these Schwann cells, they can only wrap around one axon, or one axon. Then oligodendrocyte, we say that they can form myelin sheath for multiple axons, but for Schwann cells it is only one, and they myelinate only a segment of the axon, just like what we talked about. And like these are oligodendrocytes, which can myelinate multiple axons. So we have to know that these Schwann cells are also known as neurolemocytes, and they form the myelin sheath on the axons of the peripheral nervous system neurons, or on the nerve cells that are found in the peripheral nervous system. Then they can only myelinate one segment of an axon, which is one axon of one neuron, and like oligodendrocyte, which can myelinate multiple axons. Then the other type of cells that are found in the peripheral nervous system under the glial cells are the one that we call the satellite cells. These satellite cells, what they do is that they just surround the cell bodies of the neurons that are found in the central nervous system, or in the peripheral nervous system, yes. So the peripheral nervous system. So this satellite cell, they'll be surrounding the neuron cell body. So the cell body of that particular neuron which is found in the peripheral nervous system, these cells are just going to surround it. The reason why they do this is because they want to provide structural support to this neuron. And also they help in the regulation of nutrients, and also just for protection. So they just surround the cell bodies in the peripheral nervous system, and also they provide structural support and also nutrient regulation. Yeah, otherwise, these are the most examinable points that we wanted to highlight on the nervous tissue. So just to have a quick recap, we said that a tissue is basically a group of similar cells that works together to perform a specific function in the body. And we gave examples. We have connective tissue, muscle tissue, nervous tissue. So these tissues, they're basically made up of cells. These cells, they come together so that they can form a tissue that will be performing specific. Yeah. Then from there, we say that the nervous tissue, we defined it as a specialized type of tissue that detects stimuli, processes information, and transmits signals to coordinate body functions. Then we said that this nervous tissue, it is the main component of the nervous system. And the nervous system is divided into two. We said it is divided into the central nervous system as well as the peripheral. Class for today. This marks the end of the class for today. Otherwise,